All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fellow trash talkers, whatever time you are tuning in. I'm glad to have you on board once again. You're listening to Trash Talk with D Bork, and I'm your host, Dave Bork. It is Thursday, the 25th of September, 2025. This is episode number 66 of our NFL pod. We're going to be running through all things week 3 NFL action, as well as the upcoming week 4 games that we've got. Couple of big ones, in particular, Micah Parsons returning to Dallas to take on the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones. Can pencil in Micah for a couple of sacks already, no doubt about that. We'll also be taking out some trash after our week 3 recap, and there is no doubt that my Tennessee Titans are going to feature pretty heavily here because we're a mess right about now. Probably known that for quite some time, but this is bad. It is bad. We'll run through some question time at Trash Talk with D-Bork on Insta and TikTok. Thank you once again for sending those questions right on through. After that, we'll talk some week 4. We'll have a couple of overreactions if we can find it. One of my favourites, the Detroit Lions are dead, weren't they? I thought after week 1. They're so back. They were never gone. The Detroit Lions, Motor City Dan. Huge win at Baltimore. Then we'll run through some best bets. Pretty unlucky in week 3. Dallas, Chicago in particular, that was an absolute disaster. 38 points at halftime. How on earth that game goes under? Dak Prescott simply handed the ball off, brother. And a huge slate of college football coming up this weekend. I am very, very, very excited. Sunday fun day indeed. In particular, Oregon, Penn State in that whiteout is going to be electric. Cannot wait to knock off Penn State. It's going to be great. All right, let's start with week 3 NFL action. We'll start with Thursday night footy with the Buffalo Bills managing to win that one 31-21. I've said it time and time again that Josh Allen he simply gets bored in games like this. Like, they know they're going to beat the Miami Dolphins. Tua and the Dolphins tried as hard as they might. They tried to control the ball as much as possible, and it worked to a certain degree up until the final play of the game where Tua just basically stared down the Buffalo Bills defense to get picked off. Bad. Josh Allen, 22 of 28 for 213 and 3 tuds. Jimmy Cook was enormous. Finally, the Bills actually realized that he is that number 1 back and to give him all the touches that he actually deserves. He had 108 in the ground on 19 carries and a touchdown himself. Dalton Kincaid, we featured him in the Thursday night footy player prop parlay. If only it saluted, to be honest with you. Devon Archain missing out by 1 yard. We had him for 30-plus receiving yards to cash there, and I'll stand by it. They included one of his plays as a 15-yard rush on a pass backwards, if you want to call it that. It definitely was not backwards. It was a forwards pass, so we got absolutely robbed there. But yeah, look, Kincaid 5 for 66 and a touchdown himself. Tua, you have these numbers you don't even expect to be in the game like this. 22 of 34 for 146 and 2 touchdowns. Did throw that late pick. Miami are now 0-3. I don't know where the win comes. It's probably going to be coming on Monday Night Football this week coming up. It is an absolutely diabolical Monday Night Football card that we've got, unfortunately. The second game would have been a whole lot better if things were different in Cincinnati, but they're not. But yeah, the Miami Dolphins go on to face the New York Jets because everyone wants to see that on Monday Night Footy, right? Buffalo 3-0, they go on to face the New Orleans Saints, who they're a rabble. They're probably worse than Tennessee right now. Before we do move on to the next game, I do just want to mention that you can find this episode on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Trash Talk with D-Bork, one word on YouTube. Like and subscribe for that one. I do appreciate the follows in advance. This is definitely a work in progress when it comes to getting on board with YouTube, but I'm loving it, and I hope you are too. Carolina 30-0 against the Atlanta Falcons. What the hell just happened there? Or are we overvaluing the Atlanta Falcons after their victory against the Minnesota Vikings with JJ McCarthy, who looked like an absolute mess as well? Because now everyone's starting to question Michael Penix, because Penix didn't have to do a whole lot against Minnesota. It was all Bijan Robinson. Now losing that one at Carolina in division game as well. 18 of 36 for 172 through 2 picks as well. I don't think we saw enough Bijan, but they were down pretty big early on. He went for 72 yards on the ground, as well as having 39 receiving yards. But it's poor timing again from this team. That's now 2 divisional losses for them. They lost week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and now you lose in week 3 against Carolina. Didn't just lose, got absolutely belted. That probably hurts their playoff stocks massively because Tampa Bay, they have that lane kind of sewn up. And I know they've got a couple of injuries themselves, but they're now 3-0 with Atlanta at 1-2, and obviously 1 loss behind them in that column, or now 2 technically, with 2 division losses. Bryce Young didn't even have to do all that much against the Atlanta Falcons. He went 16-24 for 121. He also rushed for a touchdown. I love seeing Bryce Young win for all that he copped as a number 1 pick. Everyone calling him a bust. No one really gives him his credit when he does actually win and leads his team to a victory. Got a very good running game in Carolina. Obviously, Enrico Dowdell and Chuba Hubbard as that 2-horse kind of running back there. And Bryce just has to look after the ball, and this team can win some games. They're probably not going to be making the playoffs, but it's just good to see them win because he suffered a lot in his rookie year. Second year, obviously, had the Red Rocket playing in front of him, but it's also taught him a lot at the same time. And look, now they get their dub. They play at New England in week 4. It's winnable. I'm not going to say they're going to win, but it's the way New England looked after the ball in week 3, then Carolina's every chance of knocking them off. The Atlanta Falcons host the Washington Commanders. Yes, the Washington Commanders that everyone talked down when Jaden Daniels got hurt because they had Marcus Mariota come in and no one expected Marcus to get it done. Funny about that, he's a clone of Jaden Daniels. Go figure. Minnesota 48-10 against the Cincinnati Bengals. It was the backup bowl with Carson Wentz up against Jake Browning. Carson Wentz, nothing fantastic, but you just have to look after the ball, and this defense took care of the rest. He went 14-20 for 2 touchdowns. He actually found out that TJ Hawkinson was still on this roster. Hit him for 5 receptions, 49 yards, and a touchdown as well. Justin Jefferson also contributing with 75 yards on 5 catches and a touchdown too. Cincinnati, they're a rabble. We said it after they started the season 2-0. It wasn't. Thank goodness for that. Once Joe Burrow went down with turf toe, this was never going to be good. Even though they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, it didn't matter because I think we saw and have seen now probably what's to come with Cincinnati, with Browning throwing another 2 picks in this one, and they're also just getting nothing on the ground because their offensive line couldn't protect anyone. Couldn't protect Joe Burrow from getting hurt once again, and obviously now not even being able to protect Jake Browning. Chase Brown was meant to come into this season and put up some ridiculous numbers. He's not doing that. He had 10 carries for 3 yards. He's killed about 2 of my fantasy teams, Chase Brown. So, yeah, it's great, as you can imagine. But Cincy, they're in some strife. They do play the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Footy. That is the second game of the doubleheader, the overlapping doubleheader. Seriously, NFL, honestly. Why are we doing overlapping games on primetime footy? Why? Stupid. Minnesota travel to Dublin in week 4. We'll talk about that one in a little bit. Tampa Bay Buccaneers 29-27. Aaron Glenn was marching up and down the sideline when they blocked that field goal and took it to the house to take a lead late. He just forgot that Baker Mayfield still had about a minute and a half to work his magic to get down the field and just kick a field goal, because you put Baker Mayfield in a game-winning situation that all he needs to do is complete a few passes to get the boys down there and do it. He'll do it. They even lost Mike Evans. It didn't matter. Emeka Egbuka is turning out to be an absolute superstar right now to start the season as a rook dog, and is playing some very, very good footy. Obviously, they're still missing Chris Godwin, which will hurt. Evans probably out for a couple of weeks too, with a massive game to come this week for Tampa Bay. But if there's anyone that can seriously get him a win right now, it's Baker. Cleveland fans must be just shaking their head because they punted Baker Mayfield quicker than anyone. Probably, I mean, a lot of people have been given the punt in Cleveland. Joe Flacco's still playing quarterback, for goodness sake. But Baker came in and somewhat saved that franchise. He took them to the playoffs. The Cleveland Browns gave him a playoff win too, and managed to also crack the Bud Light fridge as open with how bad the Browns were going. But you see Baker now playing as well as what he is in Tampa Bay. You'd love to see him have that success and make an NFC title game, because I tell you right now, if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are most likely to win this division, there's every chance that as long as they don't run into Detroit, I think in round 2, then this team can make a conference title game. Their run defense is something else. They've shut down everyone to start the season. Did it again to Breece Hall this week. You now come up against the Philadelphia Eagles with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. If they can shut that down, especially with all the weapons that Tampa Bay are missing offensively, I give them every chance to knock off the Eagles in week 4. Why wouldn't you? Game of the day was this Philadelphia Eagles team up against the Los Angeles Rams, 33-26. I leaned the Rams pretty heavily in this one, and I am an advocate of this team to potentially win a Super Bowl this season because of the pieces that they've got. Their defense is very, very good. Matthew Stafford, as long as he remains healthy, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Kyron Williams. These guys, that's a big 3 on offense that can get you some serious numbers. But their special teams let them down. 2 blocked field goals, 1 eventually taken to the house to cover for Philadelphia as well. Not only just win or rob the Rams of a victory, but to cover that as well, down 26-7 in the third quarter. You just can't be losing a game like that if you're the Los Angeles Rams. Stafford went 19-33, 196, 2 touchdowns, threw a pick. Kyron Williams was very good on the ground as well. 20 carries for 94 and a touchdown. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams combined for about 175 plus. How do you lose? You held Saquon Barkley to 46, and I spoke about this last week. I said, if you can maintain Saquon Barkley, you go on and win this game. And they did. It was just their special teams. Jalen Hurts, 21-32, threw for 200 plus, 3 touchdowns, all to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. They had 200 of those yards as well. So he spread it around. Finally found out that A.J. Brown also still exists in their roster. And Hurts also had 40 plus on the ground too to, I guess, make up for what they were lacking through Saquon. But, they're a bit of an ugly 3-0. Played Dallas week 1, scraped by against them, and we've seen how bad Dallas are. Dallas are terrible. Kansas City knocked them off week 2. I get it. Tough environment to win, especially in Kansas City, but that was ugly. He won that by 3. And then scraped by in this game against the Rams to take a 3-0 record. They're almost turning into what the Chiefs were last season. I think there are better teams in the NFC. I'm not saying this team is no chance to win a Super Bowl, but I don't see it happening at all this year. I haven't seen enough. They're losing a couple of pieces on the offensive line as well. Lane Johnson being out the last couple of weeks has definitely hurt them. And I don't think they're as good defensively. They're missing a lot through that middle. Obviously lost Montez Sweat in the offseason too, which hurts. They clearly still have plenty of talent on this roster, but I just think there's a lot more talent throughout the conference itself. The likes of the Rams, San Fran still haven't lost a game as well. Detroit, Washington. There's plenty more talent, I think, this year in the NFC. They're going to have to work for it, but it's going to be entertaining nevertheless. The Indianapolis Colts are 3-0 with Daniel Jones as their quarterback. If you had that on your bingo card, well played to you. 41-20 against the Tennessee Titans. We literally allowed Jonathan Taylor just to run right through us. And I know JT is an elite running back, but this just wasn't good enough, especially at home. The team got booed off at halftime, and they deserved it. Brian Callahan's decision-making, he looked to... One looked to draw him offside and then get a fake punt off with towards the back end of the half. Took the 5-yard penalty, then went after a 62-yard field goal after that. Obviously missed. Give Indianapolis the ball right before halftime to go down there and kick another field goal. Just an enormous swing. Not to say that cost us the match, but it just showed how dumb of a decision maker and any kind of decision making is being made on the sidelines and in the front office. Just saw yesterday, traded away Brownlee to the Jets. We don't know what we're doing. This coaching staff and front office has robbed us of that Super Bowl window that we were once in from 2018 to 2022, 23. it's a disaster now. Like, as soon as we traded away AJ Brown, obviously our franchise was completely dead. But what we're watching right now, and I saw a comment that was on Insta yesterday, the Titans rebuilding through a rebuild after that trade. It's can't help but laugh. Cam Ward, 23 of 38 for 219. DJ was 18 of 28 for 228 and a touchdown. Jonathan Taylor going for 100 plus and a touchdown himself. Cam Ward got sacked 4 times. We've got injuries obviously throughout our offensive line with JC Latham missing, which is a big out. But we can't protect Cam Ward at all, which has given him no time. It's making him look worse than what he is. I think there's plenty of talent with him. He's got a rocket of an arm, but when you got no time to throw the ball, how can you get it to anyone? Calvin Ridley was targeted 7 times, only had 1 reception. Yeomanor, I think, is a stud rookie and can build something with Cam Ward for sure, because I reckon there's every chance that we're probably going to move on from Calvin Ridley at this point. He's going to want to move on to a better situation and potentially try and win the Super Bowl or at least make the playoffs, because he's not going to be making it with the Titans anytime soon. Speaking of someone who used to play quarterback for us and I was a lot happier in these times, Marcus Mariota. Let Marcus be Marcus. And I say it so many times. The importance of having a great backup quarterback is huge. And I said that he was a clone of Jaden Daniels before. Shouldn't have said he's an exact clone. But he plays in the same style and someone who was dominating the league or in parts of games to the same manner of what Jaden Daniels can do. And that's exactly what Marcus Mariota managed to do to one of his old teams, Las Vegas Raiders. He went 15 of 21 for 207 and a touchdown. 40 rushing yards on 6 attempts for the first touchdown of the match. And I love that. That was plus 280 or $3.80 if you managed to find that. Huge. I'd go for it again this week. He's playing one of his other former teams in week 4, the Atlanta Falcons. But massive, massive win for them, 41-24 against Las Vegas Raiders. You look at a game like that and you've got to think that if Jaden Daniels is still carrying an injury, why on earth would you rush him back when Mariota can clearly get this done? And you're going up against the Atlanta Falcons, a team that just got 30 points hung on them by the Carolina Panthers. Let Marcus be Marcus. Let him play week 4. Think long-term about Jaden Daniels. There is no point in rushing him back. Mariota can get you another win here against Atlanta. I have no doubt about that. Will they be in our best? You already know they will be. The late slate on Monday, Denver. Look, they look pretty average. I know they were ahead for a lot of that game against the Chargers, but this Chargers team is probably doing the opposite of what they were doing last season, where they were ahead in a lot of games and they couldn't finish games off. But they're fighting through it. Justin Herbert looks absolutely elite right now. 28 of 47. It's a lot of passing attempts for 300 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Something doesn't seem right, though, with Bo Nix and that Denver offense right now. It's almost like Sean Payton's got him locked up. 14 of 25 for 153. That's not Bo Nix. He had 115 pretty much at the half, and he, 40 yards in the second half. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's weird. I understand that this Denver defense is very, very good, but Bo Nix is clearly capable of carrying this offense through and into the playoffs, but they need to get some confidence back on that sideline with him and Sean Payton, because it seems like there's a lot of arguing going on, so something clearly is not right, and they're pretty lucky they're not 0-3. They played the Tennessee Titans in week 1 and shouldn't have survived that. The Chargers, though, playing some brilliant footy. They're now 3-0 after winning that game by 3, but they did lose Najee Harris now for the season. Big, disgusting injury, the Achilles. Tough to watch, but it now shows us this is why they went after Amarian Hampton and drafted him. Denver Broncos should have had him. They didn't. The Chargers made that move. They've now got him. He's going to be their lead back to take this team through to the AFC West promised land, really, and try and get this team to not only win the division, but take them deep enough into the playoffs to get this done. Seattle, beat down against the New Orleans Saints. We don't have to touch on that too much. The Saints are an absolute mess. San Fran, same deal. 16-15, absolute dogfight. Mac Jones got hurt in that one, but played through that. They're another kind of ugly 3-0 situation. That team being 3-0 is a whole lot better than 0-3, so shouldn't really be complaining too much. But I think having someone like Christian McCaffrey definitely helps on that sideline. But Arizona was another team that also lost a running back against San Fran, losing James Conner for the season. So that's a big out, and they're probably going to be by committee in Arizona. Trey Benson likely to start, and you've got DeMarcado there on that sideline too at the same time. For those of you out there playing some fantasy footy, you wouldn't be against picking DeMarcado up at all because they use him a fair bit. San Fran now face Jacksonville in week 4. Jacksonville very, very lucky to get a win against Houston in week 3, 17-10. That was an ugly one, to say the least. And I don't think that game's going to be too pretty either. But if I was San Fran, clearly, if Brock Purdy's still hurt and Mac Jones is able to go again, I know he finished the game in a knee brace, I'd probably still be going with Mac. And if you cop an L, you're still 3-1, but I'd much rather a healthier Brock Purdy, especially George Kittle once he comes back from IR too, going into the rest of the season, because their schedule is pretty soft. Seattle play the Arizona Cardinals actually on Thursday Night Footy in week 4. So coming up against Arizona without having James Conner is definitely an advantage for Seattle, and especially the amount of rest that those guys would have had, particularly in the last quarter, because they were absolutely blowing the doors off of the New Orleans Saints. Definitely favors Seattle in that one. Chicago 31-14. Said it before, an absolutely disgusting total beat in that one. Caleb Williams 19-28 for 298 and 4 touchdowns. Luther Burden, I've said that name a couple of times, and I said it in preseason too, that this guy could be something else. He definitely had an impact in this game, and I think he's going to continue to do so. It's almost like he's overtaken DJ Moore. 3 catches for 101, a touchdown. Rome Odunze has almost become that wide receiver 1 now. It feels like ahead of DJ, 3 for 62. And DJ Moore, like we said, still in that offense. They're using him in a lot of jet sweeps, and in my opinion, he's still their best wide receiver. I don't know if Ben Johnson sees it that way. I think he sees it as Rome's time now, but hopefully they don't completely phase him out because he's far too good of a receiver, and they've also paid him a lot of money to actually stick around in Chicago. So you'd be making a mistake if that was to be the case. Primetime footy, Sunday Night Football, complete disaster. The Giants up against the Chiefs. It was genuinely, flat out, disgustingly awful football. Russell Wilson threw for 450 yards. 450 against the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, back that truck up, Russ. You are in the trash, and you are now on the bench for the New York Giants. They are now starting with Jackson Dart, and I actually feel sorry for Jackson Dart because this team's a mess. Their offensive line is no good. Russ was almost in the crossbar challenge of that game because they got inside the red zone and he actually threw it up the tunnel twice. It was bad. That's the first time the Chiefs have won in New York since 1978 or whatever it was, but I wouldn't hold your head high after a performance like that. They were terrible. Won that one 22-6. Like it's just an awful game of footy. One that I think a lot of us NFL fans are just sick and tired of actually seeing the Giants on primetime football. We get to see the Jets this week on primetime football. At least they try through Aaron Glenn. The Giants are so bad. I think a lot of fans are obviously excited for Jackson Dart, but you're throwing him into a terrible situation. And they play the Los Angeles Chargers this week, so good luck to him. Monday Night Footy, though, was not trash-worthy. I'll say that. That was brilliant. Complete difference to what we saw on Sunday Night Football. Pretty unlucky not to win our player prop parlay here. Lamar Jackson just simply didn't want to take off as much as he used to. And Detroit struggles so much defending mobile quarterbacks. So this was the matchup for Lamar to make it happen. And he didn't. He ran for 35. Derrick Henry ripped right through him to start the game and then had a late fumble that cost the Baltimore Ravens the game. But this is also a defense that can't really stop explosive offenses as of right now. Pretty tough start to the season, though, when you play the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo and then host Detroit. Now you go week 4, you play the Chiefs. So it's a pretty daunting month of footy. And I think if Baltimore finishes up 2-2, they'll take that. They definitely don't want to be 1-3. But this is still a tough loss for them at home. Losing that one 38-30 kind of makes it look a little bit closer. Massive play from Detroit at the death. Someone needs to tell these commentators it's 4th and 2 on the 49 or whatever it was, 50. Of course, they're going for it. Oh, they might try and hard count them. I'm not trying to hard count. They're going for it. Did we expect that play to Amon-Ra St. Brown for 25 yards down the sideline? No. They certainly weren't just trying to hard count and punt and give Lamar Jackson the ball and a chance to just march down the field and freaking score and win. It's so stupid. Jared Goff was 20 of 28 for 202 and a touchdown. Monty was brilliant. He had a long run for 70, which was rare from him to kind of be going that distance. But he had 150 on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Gibbs did battle on the ground, but was a lot better through the air. Had 67 on the ground on 22 carries and also had 32 in the air, 2 touchdowns for him as well. So 4 touchdowns combined between their 2 running backs, and obviously Amon-Ra getting in there as well was huge. But yeah, it was an odd one again because Lamar Jackson just wasn't his usual aggressive self on the ground against a defense that's been known to give it up to those explosive play quarterbacks, the likes of Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, and it's usually Lamar. But he didn't want to take off. Wants to become that pocket passer, and I get it. He still looked good in the pocket, but there were so many opportunities for him to take off, and he didn't want to do it. He was sacked 7 times, so it's rare. Obviously, that game was not in our trash, but we're going to continue the trash pile here. I am going to put Tennessee in that. I said it before. That coaching decision made right on halftime was diabolical and laughable. I know Callahan's now given up his duties of running that offense. Will that be enough to make us happy? Probably not. We're going to have another top 5 pick, potentially top 3 pick next season. We don't need another quarterback. We need freaking help on that offensive line to protect our quarterback. Jeremiah Smith come out early, a year in advance. Would be nice to get another receiver and give Keenan some help. But yeah, we're usually pretty good against the run, and we made pretty light work, or Jonathan Taylor, I should say, made pretty light work of us. So yeah, playing the Houston Texans this week, who have struggled to run the footy, could help. And they're a team that's really battled on the offensive side of the ball. So hopefully things can open up for the Tennessee Titans. But yeah, it's a tough watch right now. Speaking of tough watches for Green Bay Packers fans, they were looking at a very, very simple 3-0 to start the season, and they bullied Jordan Love. Myles Garrett and co. just completely took him to shreds, sacked him 5 times. He was only 18 and 25 for a touchdown and a pick. Judkins has been high on a lot of people's fantasy lists coming off that suspension to start the season. He looks like he's going to instill some life into this Cleveland Browns offense, obviously playing behind someone like Joe Flacco who just wants to throw the ball 40 times a game. He now has a more reliable source. We saw how good this kid was at Ohio State, and we're going to continue to see it now in Cleveland because he's playing behind a decent enough offensive line to get moving, and maybe Cleveland could surprise a few teams. They play the Detroit Lions in week 4. I think Detroit's going to be far too good for him, but I don't think Cleveland are going to be embarrassed whatsoever. Now they've got some pieces together. This team's going to try hard. Like, there's some bad football teams right now, like the Giants, like the Titans, like the Saints. Houston's 0-3, but they're not bad. They're just playing some bad footy. Cleveland Browns aren't that bad. They're going to continue to try hard, and they'll cause some upsets because that dog pound gets barking in Cleveland, and it did. Bad loss though for Green Bay. Houston. I'm putting them in this trash pile because it's just quite simply ugly. Like, they're holding teams to, a total of around 17 a night, and they just can't factor in enough offense in this game. Like, unless it's going to Nico Collins, no one can get this thing going at all for CJ Stroud. It's odd. Here he went 25 of 38, threw for just over 200, threw 2 picks, got sacked a couple of times against this Jacksonville defense. Like, the conditions were perfect here for points in this game, but neither offense could get going. I don't know what to make of Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence. They did everything they could once again to lose this game at home. Still managed to win that. Do I still think they can win the division? Yes, but this Indianapolis draw is incredibly soft coming up. They need to drop this one to the Rams and for Jacksonville to kind of keep going. But the Jags need a bit of a statement win this weekend against the San Francisco 49ers because they've battled massively to start this season. Trevor Lawrence, 20 of 40 for 222. Like, that's not amazing. You're going to take a win. It's in division. Take it. But, yeah, they need to be a lot better. New England, 5 turnovers and lost by a late touchdown to the Pittsburgh Steelers 21-14. It's a massive reason why I love Minnesota coming into this week in Dublin. If they had 2 turnovers, they win this game easily. Like Ramondre Stevenson had a couple, Drake May. It was a weird one for this New England Patriots team. Like I think they're far better than the way they played. And look, Aaron Rodgers obviously started the game red hot, but they didn't look all that to finish this game off. I know they scored late, but this New England team quite simply should have won this footy game. When you turn the ball over like that, it makes it impossible to win games. Again, 5 turnovers in a 1-score game. That's your difference. Pittsburgh weren't any better than you. You just you beat yourself. Anyway, that is the trash taken out. Let's go now to some question time at Trash Talk with D-Borg on Insta and TikTok. Thank you once again for sending these on through. At acero.d, are the Broncos the new Los Angeles Chargers? I mentioned that before. You're lucky your team, Mr. Acero, is not 0-3 because you should have lost to the Tennessee Titans to start the season. Obviously, we're pretty unlucky, I guess, in the loss to the Indianapolis Colts, but you still got beat. And then obviously lost out on the weekend to the Chargers. So, yes, you won by a small margin. You lost by 2 small margins. You now have a home game against the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Footy. This needs to be an absolute beatdown. Like, we've all seen how bad Jake Browning is. Bo Nix needs to get his mojo back, and the Denver Broncos need to win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. Simple as that. Like, this can't be an ugly win. Definitely don't want a loss. But I think if you're not winning this game by at least double digits, then there's some serious concerns about the Denver Broncos this year. I don't know what the hell is going on, but it is bizarre, to say the least. At JSCO11, another year, more pain for you. Yes, Jackson, that's not a question, but thank you for reminding me that I'm a Tennessee Titans fan. I'm also a Bulldogs fan, like we both are. So there was plenty of pain for the both of us on Sunday out at Homebush. That was tough. First 25 minutes. At least the pain was over in 25 minutes. Kind of similar to watching a Tennessee game, I guess, when the pain's usually over by halftime, or we put in for the first half and completely butcher it in the second half. So, yeah, it's a tough watch. Probably going to be another decade of absolute misery, but these are the things you do. You pick your team when you're a young kid, and there is no changing teams. I know kids can be different in this day and age of just supporting players and jumping from team to team. We don't do that when we're of our age of late 30s right now. So I'm stuck with Tennessee for life, just like you're stuck with Jacksonville. You're just your team's just as bad as mine, just slightly better. But I still have high hopes for the future with Cam Ward if we decide to just completely fire our entire front office. That'd be great. At living underscore easy life. Eagles Bucs both 3-0. Who gets the dub this week to move on to 4-0, and the 0-3 teams, Miami Jets, who's staying winless. Honestly, like I said before, I think Tampa Bay are every chance of knocking off the Philadelphia Eagles. I know they've got plenty of injuries, but you know their defensive line's just been brilliant in terms of run stopping right now, and that's something that Philadelphia rely heavy on. So I'd be siding with Tampa Bay at odds against. You can get about plus 160 or 260 for them to win that match. So that's a pretty nice one. And the battle of the winless teams, I'm actually siding with the Jets, regardless of if it's Tyrod or Justin Fields. I really want Aaron Glenn to get his first victory, and there's every chance that if the Miami Dolphins do start 0-4, then Mike McDaniels could be out the door. Tyreek Hill could be sitting out the season, or at least requesting a trade or something because he doesn't want to be around them anymore. Miami are a mess. The Jets will at least try and get this win. So I'm going to side with the Jets in that one to move to 1-3 and the Dolphins to 0-4. For you, though, Ricky boy, enjoy the Buffalo-New Orleans game. I know it's a tough ticket in town. For that one being a day game in Buffalo, I know you're going to it, so enjoy it, mate. It's a cracker. Last time we were there together, I know your Buffalo Bills absolutely embarrassed my Tennessee Titans, but that's no mean feat. We're terrible. Let's move on to Week 4 NFL preview. We start with Thursday Night Footy. The Seattle Seahawks taking on the Arizona Cardinals. Sam Darnold. His last performance in Arizona was in a different jersey for the Minnesota Vikings, and was actually a playoff game against the Los Angeles Rams. That was not good for Sam Darnold at all. It was bad. So he now gets another shot in Arizona, and they get Arizona on a short week without the services of Jimmy Connor. They were actually 1.5 point outsiders heading into this one when this game actually opened up. They've now moved into 1.5 point favourites, which I think is just about right. Arizona, they've been pretty ugly to start the season. Obviously survived against the New Orleans Saints, lost that one to San Fran. Marvin Harrison Jr. is nowhere to be seen. I don't know what's going on there with him and Kyler. Another fantasy player that continues to let me down. But I just think Seattle are going to be far too good here. Kenneth Walker's playing some very good footy. JSN playing lights out. And I think Sam Darnold wants to, put the old Arizona performance to bed from what he had last season with the Minnesota Vikings and just finish this off, get a W here, move on. Big divisional win as well at that. And, yeah, they can keep moving forward for the rest of the season. Now, this next game, for a lot of NFL fans out there, especially over here in Sydney, that is, it's late. Or early, for that matter. It's being played in Dublin. So, International NFL Series kicks off this week, and I can't wait. It's going to be fun. Temple Bar area is going to be absolutely jammed all weekend long. They've played a couple of games, college footy in Dublin over the last couple of years, and now it's the first time the NFL heads there. I think Minnesota are going to absolutely bully the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I know there's going to be a lot of terrible towels waving inside that stadium, which could kind of make it a bit of a Pittsburgh feel. But there's a small sample size with this, but Aaron Rodgers has obviously played abroad in these international series before and has been embarrassed. And I just think right now, even though Carson Wentz is playing rather than JJ McCarthy, it's actually a better fit for Minnesota and they're a better team than the Pittsburgh Steelers are. Pittsburgh would have lost that game if New England didn't turn the freaking ball over 5 times. You're not going to get that kind of turnover count from Minnesota. Jordan Mason's been brilliant in the backfield. I think TJ Hawkinson has an absolute field day because Carson Wentz actually knows that he's on that roster. They get Jordan Addison back. Justin Jefferson as well. This team is legit. They are legit. They're another team that could cause some problems in the playoffs. They're probably going to have to play from behind given that Detroit and Green Bay are better than them. But I think those 3 teams, once again, do make the playoffs. And they're going to get an international victory here. They're over there for 2 weeks as well. So this is their first of 2 games. They play in London next week. But I think Minnesota get pretty comfortable here and they get a big win after knocking off Cincinnati in big fashion last week. They'll be well rested. I know it's a long flight, but no question about it. The Minnesota Vikings get this win. Washington, Atlanta, said it before, Marcus Mariota, stick with him in this game. He goes up against his former team. And for those that have watched Quarterback on Netflix, Mariota was featured in season 1 and we saw him get pushed out the door pretty much for the Atlanta Falcons wanting to start with Desmond Ridder later in the season. I know Mariota didn't play all that well that year with Atlanta, but that team was a complete and utter mess. And I think he's going to want to go back into Atlanta and knock them off once again. Mariota's not one of those guys who's going to throw for 350 plus and want to put on a big stat line. He's just a guy that wants to win games, and he'll do that. Managed to do it last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. They're going up against a defense that, like I said, just got hung 30 on them by the Carolina Panthers. I think Atlanta aren't that good. I think the Washington Commanders are. They need to stick with Mariota. Price suggests they are because the market's moved a little bit towards the Atlanta Falcons, which is funny enough, to be honest with you. And I'm happy to take a better price about the Commanders getting this done in week 4. Houston, Tennessee. Look, I didn't expect both teams to be 0-3 kind of going into this one, particularly Houston. Maybe I was optimistic about the Tennessee Titans being at least 1-2 by this point because I saw us knocking off the Indianapolis Colts. And yeah, we couldn't do that. But Houston, yeah, odd. Defensively, they've been brilliant. They held the Rams to 14 and got beat. They held Tampa to a very, very late score to get 20 and then held Jacksonville to 17 points. But their offense have just produced absolutely nothing. Played the Rams, played Tampa, and played Jacksonville. Bar the Jacksonville game, the Rams and Tampa are 2 very, very good defensive teams. The Tennessee Titans are not. So if CJ Stroud's ever going to get it going, it has to be against the Tennessee Titans, unfortunately. Especially playing at home. This line's only a touchdown, and look, I'm not going to be one to take it, but if Stroud and the Texans can't knock off the Titans by at least a touchdown at home, there would be serious concerns that this team's not going to even go on to win 5 or 6 games this season. Like they're struggling, to say the least. Maybe Tennessee can continue their misery. I mean, I hope they do. I'd be very, very surprised. But yeah, I think if you're ever going to have a game where CJ Stroud could pop off, it could be here. So I'd be looking at maybe Stroud's passing yards in this one to attack our secondary because it's flat out awful. I mean, Michael Pittman had a big game for crying out loud. Chargers, Giants. Like I said, welcome to the NFL, Jackson Dart. This is a tough matchup. I think the Giants would have loved to give him maybe an extra week off heading into that Saints game next week and watch Russ again. I'm surprised they didn't go with Jameis Winston in this one. Give Jackson Dart another game and then start him against the Saints. Feels like they're almost pushing him into this, or Brian Daboll's been pushed into it to say, look, if you don't start this kid this week, you're just going to get sacked by week 5. So you're throwing him into a pretty terrible situation where their offensive line is an absolute disaster. And Russell Wilson threw for 450 against Dallas. Now, does that show you how bad Dallas are? Or that Russ has actually been pretty hard done by for a very, very bad game against Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are a lot better defensively than what the Dallas Cowboys are. But I think some of Russ's decision-making let him down, where he threw the ball out a couple of times in the end zone. He looked old and bad, and he's thrown a couple of bad picks too. So, look, a change had to be made. This was never a team that was going to make the playoffs, which is why I thought Dart was going to come into the equation maybe a little bit later this season. This is a lot earlier and has jumped Jameis Winston on that depth chart. But good luck to the kid. I can't see him knocking off the Chargers. I'd be very, very surprised if they do. Maybe it's one of those things that he might score an early touchdown to Malik Neighbors or give him a nice bomb or whatnot. But there's no way it's going to hold out. I think the Chargers are going to be far too good and move on to 4-0. And knock the Giants down to 0-4. Tampa, Philly, 3-0 up against 3-0. No Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. Baker just makes it work. It doesn't matter who it is. Igbuka, Sterling Shepard, Bucky Irving, Rashad White in the backfield. He'll find them. And again, this is a defense that's going to stifle the run. So it's going to force Jalen Hurts to throw the ball once again. To the likes of A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert over the middle. Dallas Goedert I'd look for in particular to have a big game here because Tampa do struggle against that. If there's one weakness that they've got, it's probably there. So with that being said, conditions here are meant to be very, very good. And if that is the game plan that we're looking at, this total looks incredibly light. And whether it's incredibly light because of these guys that are missing in action, I don't think it matters. 43.5 in Tampa for a game plan that Philly are going to have, which would be to air it out because they're not going to be able to run the ball. It's enough points. I love it. It's one of my best for this week, and it'll make it through to our segment at the end of the show. The Indianapolis Colts and the Los Angeles Rams at SoFi. This is probably arguably Indy's toughest test of late, especially going on the road. They obviously faced the Denver Broncos at home in week 2. Probably should have lost that game. We know that, but they didn't. And they're now 3-0 heading into this game against the Rams, who are 2-1. And the Rams coming off a loss like that, 2 blocked field goals, just absolutely brutal. This is a team that I see contending for a Super Bowl. The Indianapolis Colts is not a team I see contending for a Super Bowl. Daniel Jones can be playing as well as what he is to start this season, as well as Jonathan Taylor. That offensive line's playing very, very well. But I don't see that happening here. Sean McVay is far too good of a head coach. He will make sure that Los Angeles Rams put the Colts to the sword just about as early as this game possibly could be. I'd be on the Rams to win pretty big here. I'm hoping the number does move a little bit under, or just give me a flat 3 would be very, very nice. It's currently at that 3.5. But it's one of those things that could be a late decision, but to play the Rams on the minus 3.5, either way, if you're planning on having a multi or a parlay, the Rams head-to-head seems like the play there for sure. San Fran, Jacksonville, not really going to talk about it. Don't really have to. It's going to be pretty ugly. We don't really know the quarterback situation there right now with Mac Jones or Brock Purdy, so it's a hard one. Either way, I'm kind of expecting a lower scoring game because neither offense has seemingly lit it up yet to start the season. Vegas, Chicago. If Chicago is legit, they need to build on that performance from last week. But you're getting a pretty good number about Vegas. They've had a couple of very, very bad weeks consecutively, but they're now back at home. They've got to get it together. They can't give Ashton Genty any kind of running room right now, and the Bears do battle to defend the run a little bit, so this could be a game that Genty may find some room. I would circle this one, maybe a Genty touchdown or some rushing yards, get him to have 80 to 100 plus. About the only way Vegas have a chance of winning this one. The biggest Sunday game of the lot, this is outside of Sunday Night Football, Baltimore at Kansas City, both teams 1 and 2. Did you have that on your bingo card going into week 4? Baltimore could very easily be 3-0. Obviously choked against the Bills. Yes, they beat the Browns and probably should have beat Detroit in week 3. They had that one sewn up a little bit. Some bad decision-making, some fumbles and whatnot have hurt this Baltimore team for sure. Kansas City are probably lucky to be 1 and 2. They were by far and away beat down by the Chargers to start the season in Brazil. I know the scoreboard looks a little bit tighter, but they really weren't in that game at all. Against Philly, it was pretty ugly. You held Jalen Hurts to 100 and you still lost. And then they got lucky to beat the Giants because Russell Wilson was terrible. So I think the market's right here. This is the second time in 3 weeks that Kansas City and Mahomes have been outsiders, which is extremely rare, obviously, but it's deserved because I think the Baltimore Ravens are 3 points better than them, even in Kansas City. I'm hoping for some late support for the Chiefs to kind of push this line down to maybe a 1.5 or a 2.5 to get it into that, to give us some better value about the Baltimore Ravens. But this is a team that won't want to be starting the season 1 and 3. I think they're far too good for that. The Chiefs are every chance of being 1 and 3 because I simply don't think they're good enough to be that. Rashee Rice returns to action, not in this game, but more so on the practice field anyway, while still serving that suspension. They don't have any guys that are setting it alight right now in Kansas City. As good as what their defense is, I think Derrick Henry has a very, very big game here. And if he does, it opens things up for Lamar. And King Henry, especially coming off a fumble, he'll actually say it himself that he's fumbled the ball twice this season and cost them wins. This is something that the King doesn't do often. And I think the Baltimore Ravens, again, same deal. If you don't want to take the spread, you just take them into the Rams. That's a nice little double for you on Monday. Sunday Night Footy, Green Bay, Dallas. This is Micah Parsons' return to Jerry World. And boy, oh boy, is he going to make it personal. If there's anywhere out there that actually offers it, I'd be on Micah Parsons to get a sack or two in this one because he's going to do everything possible to sack Dak Prescott. And funnily enough, will actually get the crowd on their feet if he does so. This game should be an absolute demolition job because the Green Bay Packers were embarrassed by the Cleveland Browns. And there was a lot of talk about the Packers winning a Super Bowl after the first 2 weeks. They kind of got put in their place and maybe looked ahead of the Cleveland Browns to this matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, knowing how big of a matchup it was for Micah Parsons returning to Dallas. That being said, this spread is only minus 6.5. Dallas did not have CeeDee Lamb. They just got embarrassed themselves on Fox against the Chicago Bears. Green Bay are quite simply better than Chicago, a lot better than Chicago. And without CeeDee Lamb, obviously your main receiver is Georgie Pickens. I don't think he's done enough this year to be like, oh, thank God, at least we've got George. No. Green Bay should honestly win this one by 2 touchdowns. I would alt spread this up to the minus 13.5. You can get about plus 200 about that. We're obviously going to be the minus 6.5 in our best bet segment, but this is a show out or shut up game for Jordan Love because after you were just put on your ass more than enough times against the Cleveland Browns, you need to show out on national TV. Micah Parsons will also show out, and this team's going to get back on track. They'll be 3-1. They'll take that to start the season, especially with an early bye coming up. But you want to make sure you take care of business here. We've had enough of the talk. Just demolish them in Jerry World, please. The Monday Night Football doubleheader is a complete and utter disaster. The Jets travel to Miami and the Cincinnati Bengals travel to the Denver Broncos. Cincy Denver would have been far better, obviously, if Joe Burrow was playing because late last season, when Cincinnati were kind of still contending for that playoff spot, we saw an absolute cracker of a game where it was an absolute shootout, went into overtime. T. Higgins scored the game winner there, only for Denver, obviously, to go on and beat the Chiefs the following week. But similar to what I said before, Denver need to wake up. Bo Nix and Sean Payton need to get it together because this is far too good of a team, I think, to be 1-2. Like I said, they could be 0-3. But they need to absolutely beat the doors off the Cincinnati Bengals and do it early before you give them some kind of hope, especially if they score early with a Jamar Chase or he's hoping Chase Brown does something in this one. But you need to belt them early because Denver are also a team that can take a lot of time off the clock. So you put a couple of scores on early, you control this clock, you beat them by 2 to 3 touchdowns in this one because Jake Browning has shown that he's probably going to have to air it out a lot, especially trailing in this one, and he's the way he's looking after the ball right now, you can almost lock in a couple of picks for Denver here in this slot. So I'd be taking Denver to win big here. And also siding with the Jets, you can get about plus 130 or plus 140 about them knocking off the Miami Dolphins. I don't think the Dolphins deserve to be 3-point favourites over anyone right now. And the Jets will feel that they're very, very close because they were getting beat up by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and they came back to take the lead late. This team can do this. I think they can. Aaron Glenn's a terrific football-minded coach. They got a lot of talent. And like I said, it's irrelevant if it's Justin Fields or Tyrod Taylor. I think they can get this done here in Miami. There's not going to be a whole lot of home support for the Miami Dolphins. They'd probably be down the beach. It's Monday Night Footy. I know it's a late night in Miami, but who cares? Like they're not going to be at this game. The college footy slate, though, this week, this is the monster card that everyone's been talking about for so long. USC at Illinois, Notre Dame at Arkansas, big one for Notre Dame especially. Ohio State at Washington. There's a lot of support for Washington in this one. LSU at Ole Miss, and we've seen the reports this week that Lane Kiffin's daughter is going out with Whit Weeks, who's the linebacker for LSU, so maybe getting some inside information about that. Bold. Lane Kiffin's going to make that one personal, I think, this week. Be siding with Ole Miss. Auburn, Texas A&M. Auburn coming off a tough loss to Oklahoma. That was a pretty brutal finish to that one. I think the Aggies do take control in that one with the 12th man going to get very, very loud. Indiana at Iowa. Indiana just put 70 on Illinois. Iowa can put some points up, though, this year. Things have changed in Iowa. That game's going to be fairly high scoring, I think. Tennessee at Mississippi State as well. Tennessee have shown that they couldn't defend me getting through them. Mississippi State, after their horrific season last year, and you'll see that on any given Sunday, or any given Saturday, I should say, SEC on Netflix. Mississippi State were terrible. They've got their quarterback now back in action, in shape, and I think they can potentially win this one, but I'd have the over saluting there. Oregon at Penn State, whiteout. College game day is actually going to Penn State now. Obviously better than Bama at Georgia, which we know is obviously a big game too. But that whiteout situation at Penn State is going to be huge. Oregon knocked them off in the Big Ten title game last year in a controlled environment. This one being outdoors is probably Moore's biggest challenge that he's had to date in his college career. So things could get a little bit messy and maybe Penn State do get control of it. I still think Oregon win this one, so plus 140 is pretty nice. But I'd be siding with the under 51.5 if I was to have a play there. Bama, UGA. I'll be taking Bama on the money line. Georgia were very, very lucky to knock off Tennessee and Knoxville. They could be pretty gassed from that, especially going to overtime. Could have been looking ahead to Bama in that one. I think Bama's a better team. Plus 120 about them, or plus 125 you can get about them winning that game outright. Notre Dame, Arkansas over 64.5. Indiana, Iowa over 47.5. And yeah, that Tennessee, Mississippi State is over 63.5. So if you'd be playing some any college footy, play on that. But it's time for our NFL best bets. He's hoping for a better week than last week. Okay. So we went 1-3 last week. Obviously, very, very unlucky with that. Chicago-Dallas game should have at least gone 2-2 minimum. So that takes us to 5-7 for the season through week 3. We got a few more plays here this week, so let's go with Minnesota minus the 2.5 in Dublin against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they're far too good for Pittsburgh and should cover defensively. I think they're elite right now and much better offense with Carson Wentz running the show. Who would have thought you'd ever say that? Over 43.5 Tampa Bay Philly. Mentioned it before that Jalen Hurts is going to throw the hell out of the ball because Saquon Barkley is simply not going to be able to run on this team. Saquon's actually struggled to start this season as well. He's only going on about 3 to 3.5 yards a carry and now going up against arguably the best rush defense in the league and a team that does leak in that secondary. Give me some points. Give me Jalen Hurts over passing yards this week too. Washington on the money line against Atlanta. Again, I don't care if it's Marcus Mariota. I don't care if it's Jaden Daniels. This team is just flat out better than the Atlanta Falcons. It's priced as if Marcus Mariota is going to be the starting quarterback. You can almost get plus money about this team knocking them off. So you get about minus 105, $1.95 about the Commanders. So give me that. Rams, I am actually taking the minus 3.5. I know I said I wanted that line to dip under. If it does, I'll be going again. But I think they'll win this game by at least a touchdown against the Colts. I think it's time to put the Colts in their place. Whose house? Rams' house this week. It's all about the Rams. We're waiting on Baltimore for that line to potentially dip. Still could play at minus the 2.5 if it gets there, a little bit of juice, but we'll wait and see with that one. But last but not least, our best play of the week is the Green Bay Packers minus the 6.5. I am alt spreading this up to minus 13.5. Do as you please, whatever you want to do. If Green Bay don't win this game by a touchdown, I will be extremely surprised and also extremely concerned if you're a Packers fan if you do not put Dak Prescott and Jerry Jones to the sword this week. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Next week, it won't be on Thursday, so we're kind of looking at potentially Wednesday or Sunday. I'll make that known on socials, as always. There'll be plenty more posts, Sunday Funday player prop parlays, as well as our Thursday night footy and Monday night football player prop parlays as well. But I'll announce on TikTok and Insta when our next episode will be. Hope you all have an amazing weekend. Enjoy AFL Grand Final weekend for those that are watching it. NRL prelims are also on here in Sydney. Well, actually, not in Sydney. It's in Melbourne and Brisbane because the Dogs lost, unfortunately. But enjoy some NFL and enjoy some college football because we are well and truly into the season. We're a month in now.